Tēnā koutou e te wānau, koutou rā e whakarongo mai nei ki te korimako o Taranaki. Iwa tekau mā wā tā waru te iarere ki uta, iwa tekau mā waru tā wā te iarere ki tai. Ana kei te whakarongo mai koutou ki tēnei hōtaka o Koniahi Kōrero. Nā reira, kua hau tēnei a Te Aorangi Dillon e mi'i kātu ki koutou katoa I tēnei o ngā rā. Nā reira, kua ki te kē koutou I tēnei wahine e noo ana ki taku taa. Ai rā, everybody has seen Ali's interview that we did a couple of months back, and I've replayed it a couple of times actually, Kaz, because it was just so informative. But so happy to have you back on the show with me. And so just in case there's anyone out there who by some strange chance doesn't know who you are, I'm going to tuku te rākau ki a koe, and you can let everybody know who you are and what it is that you do. So kei a koe te wā.
Nā mi'i ki a koe e kare. Kia ora for that. Yeah, so ko wai ko Taranaki te maunga, ko Naru ene, Ngāti Ruanui, Taranaki wā nui oku iwi. Ko Ōkahu, Ngāti Tū, Ngāti Tupaia, oku apu, no o haui aho. So yeah, that's me. I'm working mainly in climate justice at the moment. I have my PhD underway at Victoria University, so I kind of ping back and forth. I'm heading down there, and my research focuses on looking at Indigenous rights within climate solutions. Yeah, and as part of that, I was over at the annual international law negotiations on climate change that happened at Glasgow this year. And that's known as the Conference of the Parties, or COP for short. It always makes me smile a little bit because you're always thinking COPs are something real different, but in international law, COP is specifically when the countries, try to iron out their differences around climate change. And it was a total eye-opener. So glad to be home, but heaps to do.
Yeah, so you went over, just touching on that Ngāti Tupaia Wakapapa. I was out at Rotokare today, actually, Lake Rotokare, and that is the pest-proofed sanctuary, wildlife sanctuary, out the back of Eltham, on Ngāti Tupaia and Ngāti Tupaia boundaries. So, just give them a little plug out there for all of the hard work that they're doing at this point in time for our climate and for our whenua. Now, Kare, so you went over to the COP26 or COP26, conference. So rather than me try and muddle my way through it, can you let us know a little bit more about that?
Yes, and I just really want to emphasize how important it is for all of us to be standing up not only for climate change, but to be demanding of our government that we have really Māori-led climate solutions. The reason for this is because what I saw over there at Glasgow is if we aren't right up there in our co-leadership, co-design partnership model under Te Tiriti with the government, it's just going to be business as normal. And the reason why it's so essential for us to really make these demands on our local council, on our MPs, and straight up to cabinet members and the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, is because the reason we're in this problem with climate change is because we have this capitalist, and I think I've lost you.
No, I'm here.
Are you still there? Okay,
yeah.
I just lost your screen. Yeah, so basically it's because all these systems that have got us into this climate change challenge and this really disastrous trajectory where we're putting our own lives at risk as a species and all the other species on this planet. Like, we're very dependent on the current kind of climate systems and the weather systems and the temperatures. Yeah, so really it's this kind of colonial model of politics and the economy that is based on using nature as a resource, extracting everything that will sustain a capitalist economy. And I know that sounds like really big, lofty, kind of hard to ideas, but at the end of the day, so many of those big structures come down to very specific decisions. And when your value system is a Māori value system, you're going to get really different decisions and outcomes. And that's why we need to step up. We need to be showing like the kind of leadership that you show on a daily basis, and all of our awesome leaders throughout the rohe. And yeah, basically, I just reckon if we had a Māori climate ambassador that is leading those negotiations, we would have had really different outcomes. Like, they are trying to set up this market where you can kind of trade in carbon emissions. So in New Zealand, if we don't want to, if we're saying, no, we can't make these lifestyle changes, so we're not going to do all the emissions reductions here, we're going to pay someone overseas to reduce their emissions. That's just continuing that colonial mindset, you know, like we're going to export our problems somewhere else. We're going to influence and control behaviors in another country because we're not willing to make the changes ourselves, you know. And so many Indigenous groups were really standing up against this and standing up against the New Zealand government's position. And I know, like, just coming from what I understand of Māori approaches, I'm like, well, like, even just out of a solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, we would be coming from a different perspective, I think, to what, you know, the official government negotiation point was. Yeah, so I've really come home fired up and thinking about those concrete pathways that we can really lift our people up into these leadership roles. Yeah, and contributing specifically on, you know, a new value system for our politics and our economy.
Yeah. So, look, this is awesome. Because I feel like we are seeing a change in leadership around the place. Not a change in leadership, a change in leadership models are starting to come out. And probably needed at times like this. You know, we've been through the nicey nice. We've been through the diplomatic option of, you know, just becoming kind of friends, I guess, with those who are at those upper levels. But now it's time to actually implement all of this kōrero that has been going around about the shared. Oh, what did you just call it? I should know it. I've just been in a hui all day today, and we were talking about it.
Partnership models and co-design and all of that. Yep.
Co-design, all of that stuff. Co-leading, co-partnership, all of that sort of stuff. It's time to actually see this happen. And I was talking with a colleague today, and, you know, he's around my age, he might be a little bit younger, and he was of the opinion of, like, it's time. Like, we're at a point now where we want to see it. We want to see change. It makes sense. They're not threatened. They don't feel threatened by anything. They don't feel like they're missing out on anything. And I said to him, yeah, you know, because everybody so far has done what they need to do because they've thought about the generations that are to come. And that's got us to where we are now. And now we've got to be staunch and as strong as our kaumātua, our pāhake and our tupuna have been, and carry forward with the next steps. And, you know, that comes with change, and change is the hardest thing. No one, doesn't matter how hard you are, change is, it's something to get you got to get comfortable with that. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Is that what you're thinking?
Totally, tautoko hard on this, and also to back yourself, and if there's any way to kind of instill that kind of confidence and to kind of be toe in like asserting your instincts and your values, because sometimes it gets real like face-to-face, like hand-to-hand combat, because you might be having a real difficult conversation maybe with a council representative or like an official from a government agency or whatever. And what I found really helpful is we've got a little bit of like cultural like conversations around some of our tikanga values, you know. So I'd always try to like bring those into conversations, because you kind of see it sometimes that these officials will use it to their own advantage and be like, oh, well, kotahitanga and, you know, like manakitanga and whakarongo and all this. And it's like, okay, so let me flag in this moment the tikanga value that I'm falling back on. And the funny thing is that some of these, you know, quote unquote experts or whatever, the people writing the books on economic theory, they're speaking Indigenous Māori values and technical advice. So as one concrete example, you might have maybe heard of this thing of the donut economy, which like I find it really hard because I just think about donuts and how yummy they are when I hear this. But like, this is a woman over in the UK, I think she's at Oxford, so one of these, you know, experts. And so she's saying like basically that, you know, there's a planetary boundary. She talks about like economics cannot move beyond what the earth can sustain. So she uses this image of a donut to explain her economic model. Like, you know, we can't go outside the edge of the donut. And I kind of get lost at that point. But like when you think about it, the heart of what she's saying, this is so Indigenous, this is so Māori. Of course you can't, you know, extract more out of nature than where the balance of nature lies. And that kind of intuitive like respects for Papa Tuanuku, and like it kind of makes me feel like, yeah, we can back ourselves here, because actually this is thousands of years. And listening to folks coming from the Amazon and talking and presenting in Glasgow at COP26, and people coming from like Indigenous communities in the heart of from the heart of the African continent and the forests of like Indonesia. And this is thousands of years of like Indigenous way of life, you know, where you're realizing like, wow, this is like actually like really established and successful social economic way of living, like within the harmony of the planet. And for surviving, because of how intense the climate challenge is, we need to return to indigenize ourselves and follow Māori leadership, Indigenous leadership.
It's amazing, right? We even have like the proven 1,000-year-old methods.
Yeah.
This is the crazy part for me. Like, we have evidence, we have experience. It's told in our pūrākau, it's told in our waiata, our everything. And yet here we are, we're still in this place. So yeah, I'm just so interested in what you thought about. I mean, you've talked about it a bit so far, but how, I mean, we're talking about it right now, how it could look, and it seems so simple to us, right? But you and I have had conversations about, you know, what it's like when you're in that sort of environment, government environment and all of that, and then I have to wonder how they're bringing their staff through, or their kaimai, for a want of a better word. Do you know what I mean? And so you have this wonderful stuff that's happening on the ground in some sense, you know, in regards to the co-partnership, co-leadership, all of that starting to happen. But then you get to there and it's like a vacuum.
Yep.
You know, where it just looks
I've found
different.
exactly the same thing. And the thing that I've found too is like sometimes right at the top there's really good stuff being said, and then like at the arakeke level, like we've got really good stuff happening, and then it's all the like kind of layers of bureaucracy in between. So for example, Minister Mahuta, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, she's saying this stuff I'm finding really inspiring because she's committed. She's introduced on the world stage, actually, this commitment to, she calls it bicultural foreign policy. And sometimes it feels like, oh, foreign policy, what is that? It's countries talking to each other. Like, how does that relate to my everyday life? But like all of that, like international law standards on climate change, all of the ways that we do our trade deals, you know, that's now under her leadership being done according to Māori tikanga values. She's said what all those values are. And now it comes, so meaning like when we've got things like this new trade deal with the United Kingdom, there's specific chapters on environmental and climate protections. Yeah, but it's just like, how do you manage that, like the bureaucracy in between? And like, there's one thing that I've got really into, if anyone's heard of the Official Information Act. So, you know, everyone has the right to get information from government. And it sounds pretty legal, but actually it's as simple as Googling, like wherever you're encountering some kind of block, like in your everyday life or in trying to, you know, like live or do projects according to tikanga or your value system, you can find out who is that, you know, crown entity or the public authority or whatever, and look on their website, and they will have an email address for Official Information Act when you just Google, you know, Official Information Act and whatever the agency is. And I've been firing a lot of Official Information Act requests out that are things like, who is the official responsible for deciding this climate change policy? What are the units that are responsible for climate change policy, and what are their performance review processes? Do they have to do decolonization training? Do they have to do te tiriti training? Like, how often do they do this training? Like, how soon after being hired do they have to do this training? Like, real specific stuff like that. And the information, they have to answer you. They have to. It's in the law. And it's something like 20 days or something. Yeah, so for example, I've been trying to help out our cousins down in Pōneke, Wellington, who are dealing with this stuff about like trying to buy the land or sell the land. And, you know, you probably know well the fight that's happening with Shelley Bay, and those are like our cousins down there, right? And there's a kind of Shelley Bay Part 2 that's kicking off about another parcel of land. It's still within Motukairangi, like the whole peninsula there where Shelley Bay is located, but it's like up top on Mātai Moana or Mount Crawford, as it's you know, the Pākehā name. Yeah, and for that it's like so confusing because, you know, like you have the Wellington City Council saying one thing, and then you have the company saying another, and then you have the developers saying something else. So yeah, I've become a real fan of Official Information Act requests, and I think they should teach it in high school and everyone should know about it. But this kind of, I don't know, like the next step after that, I'm still trying to figure out, like when you've got the information, then what? Yeah, but I certainly reckon like there is momentum. There's stuff like, you know, change is never easy, like you said, but I do feel really excited and quite encouraged about like where our like kind of work is going in this area.
So yeah, so the Official Information Act, OIA, others of you listening will know what that is. You've hit it though. They have to tell you. So what do you do with that information afterwards? Well, it's truth. You know, it's official. you can take that as truth. So you have like this little Bible of truth to carry around as evidence as to what's going on. So yeah, okay, we were talking about COP, but now you've caught my interest because we're talking about Shelley Bay and you've mentioned developers and all of this sort of stuff. I think it would be really cool for listeners to understand maybe a little bit more about developers and how do developers end up even in any of this, and what sort of say do they get? Like, why do they have a say at all in our iwi land matters?
Yeah.
How does this happen?
Absolutely. It's really heartbreaking, actually, and meaning I can see just so much confusion and so much pain as well, you know, because you get into these really complicated situations and it'll be like brother against brother, sister against sister, and cousins, you know, and part of me gets really angry at the Crown, because I feel like this is almost like no accident, you know, the way that trying to support our uri and doing that through like a really kind of colonial model of these like assets and companies and, you know, all this just, it's just so tricky. Yeah, and so I'll just say, like, I'm really kind of on the periphery, like on the outside. It's kind of like my vibe, you know, like I'm just trying to learn and understand. So like I acknowledge so many people are really experts and in depth and have spent decades in the midst of all this. So this is just like my kind of like on the margins understanding, and it has come through doing a lot of Official Information Act requests, because sometimes it's like people are just slinging accusations, or, you know, like, and sometimes when you send these Official Information Act requests, you can get the stuff that might actually have been deliberately withheld from you. So what I can see is a really complicated legal framework that's put over uri trying to, you know, leadership trying to support uri and development of ngā apu and iwi. So, and I'm a lawyer, right? Like and for me, this is still kind of giving me a migraine to suss out like what the legal things are, because so from what I can understand, you know, you had your settlement process, you get your trust. Okay, so the trust has a whole lot of legal obligations where they need to do everything according to the best interests of uri. That's normally how these trusts are written, but obviously like every trust is different. So you've got to read these trusts, the trust deed is called, like the kind of like guiding document. You've got to read that quite carefully to see what is within scope for all the individual trustees. And then, like we all know, like oftentimes there's a whole series of corporate entities that the trust sets up in order to manage like all the kind of financial aspects or the assets. So you could have a fishing corporation, or maybe you could have like land holding corporations. And the thing where it gets legally complicated is those corporations are governed by company law, by commercial company law. Now, a company can kind of, through its directors, so the leaders of a company are known as the directors. So the company directors, they kind of have the responsibility to maximize profits normally. And they normally only need to kind of have reporting through like an annual general meeting to their shareholders. Okay, so that's the normal thing. Like directors normally kind of go off and do whatever in their judgment is best for the company. And they just need to report back to their shareholders like once a year, or, you know, after any significant transaction, major transaction is usually called. Okay, so on the other hand, trusts, if the trust is the 100% shareholder of the company, which normally it is, the trustees normally have a different standard of oversight, which usually is like closer then a once a year report back from the company, you see. So normally shareholders, like in the kind of, colonial space, a shareholder is just a random person who's paid money to get like a copy of some shares and to be able to vote on directions once a year. But if your shareholder is a trustee who has a duty to all of the uri, suddenly it's totally different, because they need to know all the details around like the trust assets. They need to know, so the companies, so they have like this kind of closer degree of oversight under the trust law that applies to them than what the company law mandates the directors need to comply with. Does this make sense? Is this making sense? So there's kind of like this legal contradiction. Meaning, is it the trustees that should know every single thing because they've got this like massive responsibility to uri, and under trust law they kind of need to know this degree of detail? Or is it the company law that is the main approach, where they're like, nah, we don't need to give you that degree of like micromanagement feedback, we can just go off and do our thing? Okay, so if you're with me on that, the final piece to answer your question about the developers is whenever you get, especially like right of first refusal property, which is usually a group of properties that were negotiated in the initial settlements. So whenever you have a right of refusal come up, there's this challenge where like the right of first refusal still means that you need to buy it like at market rate. So unless you already showed up with a ton of money, you could be given like the option to buy this land and no one else, the right to have the first chance to buy this land before it goes to market, but you still need to pay like kind of market rates for that property. So how do you finance it? And that's where you get people like the Wellington Company. I can't believe they called themselves that. That is such a like colonial throwback, and all of those colonial companies that came over and committed, so many atrocities were specifically named, like the New Zealand Company, the Wellington Company. Yeah, so you have people like Ian Castles at the Wellington Company working with more specific kind of technical folks, and a company like Egmont Dixon, which again, like for us, Egmont is like a complete corruption of how we conceptualize the relationship with our maunga, right? Taranaki, not Mount Egmont. And I'm so glad that they're going to change the name from Mount Egmont National Park. So then you get folks like the, oh yes, thank you. So then you basically have these developers come through and they say, well, we can upfront and help the cost of buying that, because we will, we're very rich companies. We have that kind of type of money sloshing around, and then we just need to get paid back after the development is completed, when these houses go for sale, which means those houses need to go for sale at market rate. So, house prices are astronomical right now, and it makes complete commercial sense for the developers to do that. So, we get really frustrated with our company directors, because they'll go and make these deals because they're realizing, I truly think they're probably doing it out of the, benefit of the doubt, like out of the best interests for their responsibilities as directors, and thinking we can't afford to buy this property straight up front, but if we partner with this developer, we can afford it, and that's good. And then we'll try to like carve out some of those houses as affordable houses for uri. So that's how I understand what's going on. But then through the Official Information Acts, you get this really weird situation where you get like non-Māori employees of like Egmont Dixon or the Wellington Company going to government agencies like HUD, like what is it, Housing and Urban Development, and they're saying like, literally they're saying like, we are the iwi representative. And that's when it gets like, people just get so upset and mad when they see that, so then the big questions are, what are the options if we want to build really innovative papakanga designs and really embrace our right of first refusal rights? how do we actualize that within a limited, when we don't have enough cash flow, maybe to do that outright? And are there any other options to partner with people who maybe aren't developers of that type of caliber? Does that make sense?
Wow. Oh, the sad thing is it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. It's disappointing to hear, to be honest. Yeah, to think that developers who are supposed to be working with us, using it in a sense, but it's not surprising. It's not surprising whatsoever. I mean, the Wellington Company, like of all the things you could call yourself, you've gone there. Okay, well, that's a sign. That's a sign.
Yeah,
right?
I reckon.
It's a sign of the character of the people. So, that just took it to another level. In regards to, I know we've talked about the co-partnership models, how that's going to definitely benefit not just how things are done in this day and age, but it's going to benefit our kids and their mokopuna, because we should be getting through all of that hard work now so that it's easier for them, because by the time it's their turn, they'll have something else that they're having to deal with. That's just the way life is going to be, I think. So hopefully it won't be this sort of stuff. It will be in a different arena, I would say. So the key would be that we have to offer opportunity to our kids to get as much education as they can right now and moving forward. But them knowing about that Official Information Act, that in itself is going to provide so many other avenues for them, because that's kind of, I mean, people talk about OIAs all the time, but people still seem to be in the dark.
Yeah, and something that I've been really trying to wrap my head around is, do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're kind of so caught up in defending yourself or fighting or countering the narrative that it's almost like you're constantly on the back foot and you're constantly kind of caught in this loop? And I'm trying to think, like, how do we break through that and do the stuff that I think we all really would love to do? And I love you talking about our children too, because, like, to me, the most powerful pathway is when you are creating your own narrative and your own vision, you know? So the work that I've been trying to do, both with climate, but also working with folks within Taranaki Wānui to kind of be like, well, what is the vision? Let's, yes, there's all these fights and we need to fight, but we also maybe can be proactive and protect ourselves, protect our space, to have space to dream, to have space to build that vision where we feel safe and well and flourishing in harmony with nature, and it's so interesting. And here, both here and in Wellington, we've got these kind of exciting opportunities, right? Like, I know within Ngaruene, there's that kind of deferred settlement property process going on. And that immediately got me thinking, listening, because I was like, oh, like, this could, let's see if this could be a way we can build those dreams and have, constructive ideas of what we want to do with our assets here in South Taranaki. And then within the Pōneke side, I was like, what if we were really starting the conversation with, let's build the UNESCO standard of urban papakainga design, because there's folks throughout the country doing really cool stuff like that. Like, I was reading some awesome stuff about Ngāti Whātua doing some cool urban papakainga, down in Wakatu doing some really cool programming, and like maybe we can start in the dreaming and envisaging positive side with our kids, and that way you kind of maybe can start with the positive, and then it's almost like once you can see it, then you can be it, then you can go and figure out like all the ways to build that pathway into the future and the vision that you want.
I totally tautoko that. I think that's probably one of the things that is often missing when we are looking at how do we do something. We take the dreams and aspirations side right out of it because we start looking at it more humanly, I guess, and more like, oh, but how are we going to do that? And I just think immediately that stops people from thinking, actually, here's the dream or the here's the fulfillment of a legacy. I'm trying to get away from that dream and aspiration sort of term. It's not that I don't like it, but it's that I think in the space of iwi, whānau hapu and iwi, there is a legacy that's been left already, but we're feeling like it's our dream, but it's actually something that our tupuna have already left for us. They wanted us to be homed. They wanted us living back on our marae. They wanted all of those things for us. They've had to sacrifice hugely for us to be anywhere near it. So this is my own thing. I'm not saying everyone has to do this, but I try to bring it forward as in we need to fulfill some of these legacies as well as have our own dreams and aspirations. And I see papakainga living nowadays more of a responsibility than it's something you could strive for. I actually think that our people deserve it. Like this is what is absolutely paramount to our well-being, is having a principal home. It used to be the marae. It used to be papakainga, and then it became marae. And now we have to start rethinking again, or not rethinking, looking back at those legacies that have been left and start to shape it. And, you're right. We are seeing it. We are seeing it happen all around the place. It just takes a lot of bravery for people to really, man, we deserve this. Of course we do. No one deserves it more than us. Why can't we do this, and if we have to take tautoko from someone else to get us there, then let's do that, like, heck, we've all got full-time jobs and trying to, manage our time and our kids and our mokos and stuff like that. If someone else can come in here and say, hey, actually, here's a plan, let's look at it like this. It's got to have you stamped all over it. Why not do that? Because like I just, you've given me a little bit. I've got inspired again, actually, in regards to this papakainga stuff.
This is so inspiring. I love how you're thinking with legacy. So by that, are you meaning like it's almost like kind of like a tupuna inheritance, or is it like is it inspired from? The reason why it really got me thinking was because of the world needing to move into needing to move away from the colonial and capitalist mindset. So I'm immediately thinking like, maybe is that like the core of what you're referencing there? Like, is it kind of learning, not learning, but like applying, or so? I don't know how to talk about it, but I think that's what you're getting at, eh?
Yeah, I think the key is that there's been a lot of work already done, with these DSPs, and I can't talk for everybody. I don't know what everyone's going to do, and I don't even know what we're going to do yet. We haven't had those intense hui about where we're actually headed, but the whole point was to get that whenua back. You look at, Te Toko Waru is the most recent example. To'u and Te Witi, they're the most recent examples, but they're not the only examples. There's 100 years before that even, where our tupuna were fighting for whenua, between whoever, but they did it for a reason. So we had somewhere to be, because our everything lay within whenua. It was everything to us, and so I don't know why I've come to this point where I'm like, well, actually, this isn't about us. Like, wow, cool, we're going to have whenua. This is actually about us. Yes, of course we're going to have that whenua back because it's ours. So we should not be in a place where we feel so grateful that we're finally getting something back. No, we talk about it, we haka about it, we sing about it, everything about it, about our whenua coming back to us. So we shouldn't feel so like, oh, thank you. Like, I just don't believe that. I think we should feel completely like that is ours. What are we going to do with it? We're going to do something with it that fulfills a legacy that those tupuna who fought for us, even think down to like places like Orangi Tuapeka, all those sorts of things that have happened for us to now be in a position where we can do something with it, So, yeah, I think we've got to get out of that grievance stage. We have to move away from that now. And now it is anga whakamua. I mean, we're in a different place to say our Ngāti Māori relations, who have only recently signed. We're in a different place to Waikato. We're in a different place to Whanganui. Everyone's at different stages, but for us here in Ngā Ruahine at this point in time, and people can disagree, kei te pai tērā, I'm not saying I'm the Messiah, but for me, I just think it's time to move out of that grievance stage. I don't want my kids sitting in it, and really start to accept that we deserve this. We deserve it. We deserve, as Ngā Ruahine uri, to walk on our whenua that's been given back. Well, okay, we've had to buy it, but you know what I mean? It's there. We have to accept that we deserve it and not be so like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you for thinking of us. Oh, heck no. Yeah,
this is
that's
so
not me,
inspiring.
man.
Okay, so interestingly listening to you, I was thinking about, and this is my own colonized thinking, and especially as a lawyer, like we struggle the most because we're so, imprinted with like legal frameworks that is the, pointy edge of the colonial sword. But one of the legal standards within the climate international law is intergenerational justice. And they think of it both forwards and backwards, because the whole essence with climate change is that it's condemning, if it goes unabated, it's kind of like condemning future generations in our uri to, an unlivable planet. And then backwards too, because it's like there's all this legal standard around the idea that the, quote unquote developed countries, like the colonial countries, kickstarted this economic model through the quote unquote industrial revolution. And as a result, there's like this historic legacy that's reflected in the law, because they talk about needing to kind of have greater responsibility on countries like ours and countries like England that benefited from that historical injustice that created the carbon emissions that is the problem we're in now. But then listening to you more, I was like, oh yeah, but is intergenerational justice, is that a perpetuation of the grievance mindset? And instead, like the power in your word of legacy is like, it's a right that was always present, I'm kind of hearing it's like you've arrived home and it's like, you're no longer like bowing and scraping, and like you're saying, like to be so grateful for what was yours all the time, the whole time through. But thank you for this, because I'm going to have a good think about this and really adapt that into how I think and talk about these concepts, because yeah, like you're right, you're totally right, and especially like down in Pōneke, where they're having this on Motukairangi, it's like the way some of our cousins talk about it is like it's the cradle of like human civilization within our capital, because they're past sites that are like 600, 800 years old, and the first human inhabitation there. And so this is the legacy. That is literally a legacy.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm only young in this space. I understand that, but you know, I've been around for a little bit, I guess, and been amongst a few things here and there. Observed and been a part of other things to do with whenua, and of course on my mum's side the same. You know, we've had exposure is what I would call it. We've been exposed to certain things. And when you think about it, it all goes back to what you're trying to fulfill, that your tupuna have left that ara for you. And you wouldn't have that ara to follow if it wasn't for them. So yeah, I'm just not one of those ones who's grateful and thankful. I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful for my tupuna. I'm grateful for my grandparents and my parents for the life that they've given me. And I've had a wonderful life, like beautiful upbringing, and still learnt resistance and resilience, learnt all of those things. And I just feel like we are in a place where our people deserve the best life that they can have. You know, we have to be in a position where we take our whānau who haven't had the privileged life that some of us have, because some of us have had a privileged as life, you know, even within Te Ao Māori. So we talk about, you know, white privilege and entitlement and things like that, but some of us have lived very privileged and entitled lives ourselves within Te Ao Māori, and we have to come to terms with that too and accept that some of us have had way better lives than others. And how do we start to undo that sort of an attitude, because it is an attitude, I think, sometimes. How do we undo that attitude so that everybody's just living the best life that they can? Because you can't tell anyone what their life should look like. But if they feel like it's been a good one, then that, you know, that's a goal, I think, in fulfilling a legacy. I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit now, but I'm feeling like, man, you know, I actually was with a couple of rangatahi, or a bunch of rangatahi the other night, and we were talking about carrying on with an event that we had planned. But, you know, time was ticking and we hadn't really promoted it and da-da-da-da-da. And it was like, oh, we'll just hold off. And, you know, I said to them, you know, like, it's never a no for me. Like, never, ever is anything going to be that hard that you can't do it. But you can only make something successful if everyone who is involved in running it feels okay about it. So if there's just one thing that's a little bit off, then kei te pai tērā. You go full hammer and tongs when everyone's into it, of your core organising group, I suppose. And that was so easy, because then it was like, okay, we're going to wait until January. We'll feel better about it. We're going to promote, you know, and it was just that easy to just change the way you were going to do something. But yeah, so that's my that's my general attitude, is like, no, it's never a no. We just got to work it all out first, and then decide if it's a do it a different way. So yeah, I just think at the point that we're at right now, yeah, we're in a good spot to start actually understanding how much we deserve what we're starting to get, and we deserve more. We deserve more. Like Matua Hoani says, what we're getting back in the sense of ngā ruahine is a crumb. It's a crumb. But we can't stay there thinking that way, you know. We've got to take, and we have taken that crumb, and we've already grown that crumb. And yeah, it's going to be a full-on feast eventually. But the other thing that I think is, the feast might not come for us. You know, it might not be there in our time, yours and ours, and we have to accept that. We have to accept that we are just still, you know, we're adding whatever to the hangi right now. we're not the ones that are going to feast fully on it. We might not even see the whole table laid, but I think if we keep that in the forefront of our mind, that what we're doing right now is all about just fulfilling a legacy. And, you know, look at Wakatipuranga Ruamano, right? Perfect example. Like all of those years back, down there in Raukawa, Ngāti Toa Rangatira, our people, Te Ati Awa ki Whakarongo tai, like they were just so brave enough to think that all those years later, it was going to look a certain way. And like you walk into Otaki now, everybody, people do not know that they don't know how to not be bilingual, except for that lady that owns a sheepskin shop on the main road and was racist to the Kazi Hori. But, you know, she probably don't even live in Otaki. But, you know, like that is the perfect example, of future, just looking ahead and looking like we deserve it. That's a total legacy, man. Anyway, rambling on.
Oh, could I say one last thing on that, because you've just inspired something in me again, because I've been working on some like litigation cases around climate justice, and so I was talking with some expert witnesses, Māori expert witnesses, and there's some awesome people at Landcare Research that have done this like GIS mapping, like mapping of geological information systems, I think it stands for. And they've got this interactive map where you can look at the whole country. So I was looking at Taranaki region, and you can see the historical vegetation, and you can see the current vegetation. And so talking about legacy, you can go back pre-confiscation and see the beautiful like vegetation all through our region. And it was mainly like totara, like beech trees, and, you know, like this kind of type of swamp. I forget the name of it, but like the crazy thing is when you look at it now, it's that obviously like dairy, like it's been totally deforested, right? If that deforestation, and it's straight down the confiscation line. It's just remarkable. Like you could overlay those maps on the nature destruction and the community destruction through the confiscation. And that was it's giving me like goosebumps. That's just looking at that from an evidentiary perspective. I was like, yes, our legacy is all the potential from this land to be reforested, you know, like that's, I think, and you're right, like to know that we're just putting like some hangi stones there, and maybe it's like the legacy fulfilled across generations from now. That's the kind of thing that gives me hope.
Absolutely. I mean, we're in a position where we're going to you know, I've been saying it the whole time. You're 100% right. You know, and it's so interesting that we've ended up here, because last week I interviewed my nephew on on their, their kaupapa that they've started. It's called Whenua Māori, and they provide the support, I guess, for people who have Māori land, Whenua Māori, you know, trusts, whoever. And they provide the support to them to decide what best to do with that whenua. You know, they are in the business. One of them is ex-forestry, and he saw that in amongst all of this stuff, that there was no one really advising Māori, people who were trustees or shareholders or whatever in Whenua Māori, as to what they could actually do. So there were, you know, I mean, we all know, if someone's going to come in and say, hey, think about this, it's better than a kore, you know, better than just sitting around thinking about not much, just like, here it is, we've got it. I just think what they're doing is awesome. And I'm so inspired by that sort of movement, you know, like people, and, you know, like I was saying to him, oh, what's the feedback been from the agriculture sector, you know? And he's like, well, actually, because, of course, they're working with Māori who have whenua Māori, people are ready for change. they'll look at change, but not, like you said, it's not about just ripping the cattle from the whenua. It's about actual integration of new options. And, actually, okay, if you're going to carry on doing that, then how do you do it better? And yeah, I just find that so super inspiring, because I feel like it's taken us out of this phase of like, we're not really always the ones in control, because we're sort of like taking someone else's model of something that's maybe not the best thing to do with our whenua, but it's the thing we do around here. And, I loved talking to them. It was really, and they take a lot of the pressure and the work out of it for our trustees who have full-time jobs. They're trying to hold it down at the pa, whatever else, and then, they come in and they can either set you up or they can give you the advice and you go and you do it yourself. So I just think there's so many options and opportunities around for all of our people at this moment to really, and not only that, there's examples. There's like heaps of examples around of iwi who have, got land back, or they've settled and they're like thriving. So yeah, I just think it's a real exciting space right now, because the world's our oyster, man. The world is our oyster. Anyway, holy moly, Kare, that just went so super fast. And kia koutou e whakarongo mai ana. Thanks for that. Thanks for hanging in there with Ali and I as we went on our little journey from COP26 into developers, into what to do with whenua, into legacy fulfilling. This has been awesome, but it's not over yet, because we're just going to see if Ali's got anything else that she wants to add to the hangi, add to the tepu.
I'm following you guys all the way. Yeah, I'm just like here to help, and yeah, the work that you're doing, this Kōrero, all of this is awesome, because it's connecting us, and that's where all the magic happens. So yeah, kia ora.
Ka pai e mihi ana. Nā reira e te iwi koutou rā e whakarongo mai nei. Ki tēnei o ngā hōtaka o Koniahi Kōrero, ko Te Aorangi Dillon, tēnei maua ko Ali Anitawaru Cole, e mihi ana ki koutou katoa. Hei konei, hei kona e te